Hey everyone, welcome to today's success story interview. My name is Harsha. I'm from the e-GMAT team, of course. And with me today is Akanksha. Now, let me introduce Akanksha before we, hear from her. Akanksha is one of our students. She's a successful student. She scored a 740. And what's so great about the 740 is she scored a V45, 99th percentile. It's something that we don't always see. And Akanksha's journey is very interesting. It's illustrative, and I'm sure for those of you who are listening to this, there are a lot of learnings that you would get from this particular discussion. So welcome, Akanksha. It's a pleasure having you here. Let's hear from you.
Thank you, Harsha. This is probably the greatest introduction I've heard about myself. And yeah, I think it's been an interesting journey, and I'm really, really glad that I could, partake in this journey with e-GMAT in general and you in particular, because it helped me a lot. So yeah.
So it's great. It's always great to talk to students, successful and unsuccessful. Even unsuccessful students also teach us a lot. Successful students also teach us a lot. That's why we do have these interactions periodically. So I believe you came to us in 2021. And at that point of time, you took a Sigma X mock and your starting score was 520.
Yeah.
With a Q31 and a V31. So we were like, okay, V31, not that bad. We could see that, with a little bit of work, with a little bit of structured effort, we can definitely, push it up. Q31, yes, you have to work through our quant. So we realized all that initially. Before we jump into the discussion of how your journey on the e-GMAT platform was, why don't you give me a general introduction about yourself? What should the person watching this success story interview know about Akanksha?
Okay, so I'll start from the basics. I'm basically a liberal arts undergrad. I just turned 20 and I'm studying BA honors liberal arts from this school called Jyoti Talal School of Liberal Arts, which is in NMIMS Mumbai. So fairly young, in my third year, still at a point in time where I'm figuring out a lot of life. Because I was from an arts background and I come from a family that has people that are really good at math. I think something that rankled me always is the fact that I maybe wasn't the greatest at it. And I was somebody who really enjoyed reading and writing, and I write poems and everything. So soon realized that, after the first Sigma X mock test, that does not necessarily translate to good verbal score. So I was sure that I wanted to give the GMAT even before I was in my second year of my liberal arts education. I just thought there was a great opportunity to see where it is that I stood and where it is that it opens a lot of doors. So I wanted to see where it is that I could go from there. But yes, I don't think I'd ever anticipated what it would be like to give an exam that you're giving with people from all across the world, because my experiences before had been limited to say exams for school entrances that were constrained to my locality, or exams for college entrances which were again constrained to the country. Another thing that I was the reason why I chose the GMAT as an exam over any other exam was also because it was computer adaptive. That was something that I had never done before, and the idea of being challenged by my own limitations in a way where how you perform in your previous question is actually determining what it is that you're going to do in your next question. That was something I was blissfully unaware of before I enrolled in your classes. But then when I started with it, I was just I was just in this position. I was like, okay, this is something that's going to tell me a lot about myself. Score does not mean score matters, but more than that, I think it's going to tell me how it is that I react to certain situations, and maybe I'll take something from it that I can apply to, say, my liberal arts education as well. That's about it.
So that's actually very insightful. Of course, firstly, most of the people who, quite a lot of people who take the GMAT do have some level of work X. So in a way, your decision to write the GMAT gives you a certain cushion. The fact that you have got a good score, 740 right now, it gives you a certain cushion. While a lot of people are, slogging along with their work X, preparing for the GMAT, you can sit. You already have that score in the bank. What's also interesting is you're at a stage in life where you're still figuring out what it is you want to do, where it is you want to go. But you realize that this is a exam that opens door, and you also like the element of challenge. So you wanted to see where you stand in a computer adaptive test. What is it you can apply from that to the rest of your career, liberal arts, etc., etc. It's a very interesting insight as such. So I understand now what prompted you to, get into the GMAT space. Like, yes, I want to write this exam. So let's talk about your research. So how did you arrive at e-GMAT? Was e-GMAT your first choice, or did you go through, other phases of decision making? What eventually brought you to e-GMAT, and what all was your consideration when you eventually made that decision?
I think, again, I'm just going to bring my age as a factor. I was really young, and so ideally you should have done research. But I was someone who was impulsive, instantaneous in whatever it is that I did. So this is it was extremely, extremely sudden. I was at this phase, I was with in the beginning stages before I decided on the GMAT. I knew I had to give a management exam. I did a GMCAT program. Didn't really work out for me because I didn't understand a lot. It felt like I was studying for like a school thing. And so I was at crossroads. I was over here with my father and telling him that, I don't like, he asked me for a plan. He was like, what is it that you want to do this year? And I didn't have anything to say. I was just like, maybe we can do this, maybe we can do that. I can maybe try for the CAT next year, do the GMAT now, later. And that's when he stopped me and he was like, do you even know what's there in the GMAT? Let's just figure out one exam. So I went on Google and I searched, what is the GMAT? And the first website link that I got was e-GMAT. So it was like, it went there and I was like, okay, this place is it gives a lot of clarity. And I noted down points for the GMAT. And at the end of there was like this, my dad had fallen asleep by then. I was just noting it down on my own. And I was like, I'll tell him tomorrow. There was a line that went, if you want to, you can book a free consult. You can book like a free strategy consultation call with one of our experts. So I was like, cool, I'll do that. And so I clicked on that. And one thing that really worked for me was the fact that you offered a lot of free modules. So I started looking at, say, the subject verb modifier modules, and I felt like it was Ren and Martin in like really cool animation form. Like I could understand a lot of things, because even though I'm a liberal arts student, I realized that, a lot of things that you learn when you're a child, like what is a phrase, what is a clause, all of those were things that even at my relatively young age of 18, 19 were things that I'd forgotten. So it helped me to sort of gain that insight. The next day, I remember vividly, my parents went out and I got on a call with Weber. And he was the one, I actually got on a call with Weber both the times. Second time also when I came slinking back was Weber. First time I spoke to Weber, he was the first person who asked me, what is your goal and where is it that you stand now? And he brought this chart out and he showed me how far I'd actually have to go. And I thought that was unique, because, you go to places that tell you that in 3 months and 4 months, we'll take you here. But then who is this you that they're talking to? They're not really figuring out who you are, what your strengths are. So Weber was the one that told me, make full use of, say, the free modules that you have. And even before you've prepared for anything, whatever knowledge that you have, you give that free Sigma X mock test. You have nothing to lose, everything game. Did that. Actually did that after I enrolled, but I was convinced, and by then I had to tell my dad that, okay, I've made a decision and this is like a really cool thing and I want to do this. So I'd actually, because my father had gone out, I'd recorded this call that I had with Weber, and there were insights that he'd given. He'd shown that plan was very, I don't know how to say it in like, I wouldn't say methodical. I wouldn't say that's the right word to use, but it was very structured. And I think that's something that you keep on mentioning in whatever it is that you have, very structured approach. So you weren't telling me that I was going to be creating miracles at like any step. You were just like, okay, you're getting here, 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 here. And then it seemed like a doable target. So that was what motivated me to go with e-GMAT. It was the first thing I found and it was the best thing I found. So yeah, that's basically it.
I like the fact that you brought up, that free sigma x mock. As in, people ask, okay, why are we doing this? And it's very important to understand that, anybody can, go online and create your own random study plan. Okay, I believe I'm great in verbal, so let's study verbal for 1 month, and then quant, because I'm not that strong, maybe 1.5 months. Anybody can do that, but GMAT is all about those subsections. So you might already be fantastic in sentence correction. You may not be that great at critical reasoning. It's important to capture that. A really good plan will cover those aspects. So I'm glad you touched upon that, that aspect of the preparation. It starts by taking a sigma x mock, because that tells you what your subsectional starting ability is. That gives us the basis to say, okay, this is where Akanksha is, this is where she needs to go, so here should be a plan that should ideally fit Akanksha to a team. So very good answer. It kind of highlights some of those important points that, I think students should realize the value of that personalization. Now, so you started with the course. Did you start with quant or did you start with verbal?
I started with this is not a really good answer because I toggled between the two. Would not recommend.
Exactly. No, we saw that. That's why I'm asking you that.
So I have a rationale. I wanted to start with, I was clear that what you recommend usually start with verbal. That's what everybody recommends, is what I mean for people, because sentence correction is something that what I was recommended, at least, was you start with verbal. Now, I thought that there's nothing wrong with that, because I'll enjoy doing English. What I didn't anticipate, that was during the height of the second wave in India, which is where I am. So what I didn't anticipate was I tested positive for COVID the day after I enrolled in e-GMAT. So I gave the sigma x mock test, and then I was like, okay, I have COVID. And I had my final semester examinations in a week, and I had assignments. So because of that, the commitment that I thought I'd be able to, like, I did the master comprehension course really well. Started with sentence correction, did all of that, enjoyed it. But again, like I said, I come from a family that has people who are really good at math. Like I have an uncle who's also good at math. I think he got a Q50 or a Q51. So the focus was, even though I wouldn't say I'm bad at it. I enjoy math, but comparatively not that great when you compare me to like other members of my family. So when I got my summer break after my exam was over, my parents, and you hear me use the word parents a lot, don't hold it against me, because in the end, like, but a lot of my decisions, positive and the negatives, have been influenced by what my family's thought was right. And this entire GMAT journey has also been a journey of me coming into my own, maybe taking a stand and figuring out what it is that I needed to do for myself. Because as anybody who's my age and watching, you'll get there. But
this is very good, anyway, important advice for freshers. Carry on. Yeah,
like it seems possible, but you get there. You get to that stage where it's not a point of saturation, but you get to that point where, you just like, you're hearing everything, you'll find it in you to figure out what it is that you need to do that's best for you. So I was advised by my dad to focus on the quant section during my summer break, because that was going to be more helpful. I could use that time actually to figure out get that done, get it out of the way. And back then we were extremely ambitious. We were like, we will give this exam in the month of July or August. And that's mistake number one. Do not think, like, not I wouldn't say do not count your chickens before they hatch. Do not even think about it. Like, forget counting. Don't think about that, because that's what really got to me. The fact that I felt like I had this thing that was looming over my head, that the GMAT had to be given on this day, that made me extremely, like, at least in your beginning stage, when you're starting from like a 660, that's a different thing. You know the game, you know what it is. But if you're starting from a 520 and you need to do a lot of work in, say, building your foundations, don't do that to yourself. Don't pressurize yourself. Don't tell yourself that this is when I have to give it, because you don't know how things will pan out. Despite your best efforts, like despite my best efforts, I needed more time to understand concepts in number properties. I needed more time to understand because you're not just understanding concepts, you're also understanding, I think more than concepts, you're understanding patterns. So that's when the reason why I switched from quant to verbal was obviously because I thought I'd get more time to understand these concepts. But then again, I got a strongly worded email that went, "Are you sure? We'd recommend you do not toggle to and forth." And I wanted to say, not my choice, but I'm like, yeah, I will stick to quant. And
I've seen those
yeah,
mails. So yeah.
You probably have. I go back, like, you have a cringe-worthy session sometimes. It's just like, let me just see what it is that I've done. Young me. Now I can look at it and smile, but very nice years back then. Who do I not disappoint? I have somebody here, I have somebody there, even though they're online, even though they're writing emails. I want to do good by everyone. So, yeah, I would say that a lot of why I toggled was because I wasn't in that state of mind. I didn't have that confidence to maybe put myself first, figure out what it is that I could do, where it is that I lacked. And so if you notice, what happens is I toggled back from quant to verbal towards the end when I realized that, okay, I have this thing looming over my head. I need to give the exam in July end, or like in like the beginning of August. And now I've done quant. I should do another, like within quant also, even after number properties, you ideally have to cement. We'll get to obviously that later.
Yes, of course.
Multiple subsections. I need to finish it first. And then when I realize that, okay, I'm finishing it, but I'm not retaining it, and quant still seems like a no-go for me, maybe I should go back to verbal and focus on what it is that I am good at, which is my mom's advice. So it was basically whichever parent was more predominantly influencing me at that part or speaking to me about it. That's what I was getting. I wouldn't say getting influenced by, but that's where I was coming from. So one person was like, focus on your weaknesses. Second person told me, focus on your strengths. And I told myself I need to give the exam by July and September. Didn't happen.
But yeah, we're talking about July 2021, just for readers. We're not talking about 2022.
22, it took me 20 months. So because of that, I think that's when I toggled a lot. And this was also a time when I didn't know how it was that you communicated with the strategy expert. I didn't know how it would, and this was because I would recommend joining those onboarding sessions, building that confidence to actually go there and tell somebody that, hi, I screwed up, or hi, this is not working, or hi, there's a reason why, because more often than not, you're at a standstill, you don't know why you're at it and why you're there. And you will not figure out why you're at that standstill or what you needed to do to get out of it, because you're within that box. So if there's somebody who's coming from outside who knows what it is that you are doing, but is also, say, isn't like, because, again, parents, friends, people who are close by, they will see that you're working 6 hours, 7 hours, 8 hours. But if you're not getting anywhere, or if you're at a standstill, like I was, there's no you. It's better to basically reach out and, panic with a strategy expert who knows how to handle that panic than panic alone and make another decision.
Yeah. So what you said, there are some key learnings that students should understand, and you learned this through your experience, and this is what as strategy experts we try to tell upfront. Like if you want to solve for ability, forget about time. If you put that time pressure on your brain, you're not going to be able to build your ability. For starting from a 520, you want to hit that 730, 740. Forget about time, focus on building ability. Initially, it does seem like because of family pressure, you did start toggling. And in essence, you're putting time as a pressure factor on top of your head. And that makes learning more difficult. So it's excellent that you at some point you figured it out and then you focused on one at a time. And very, very important. I hope people who are watching this interview also realize this. As far as possible, don't mix subsections when you're trying to learn. It generally comes back to bite you. And as we love this term cementing, like you talked about cementing as well. Like finish the subsection, don't just rush to the next subsection. Ensure that you've properly cemented those processes, those concepts in your brain before you go to the next. So very important discussions there. Now tell me about how you found the platform. Start with quant, go to verbal, or start with verbal, go to quant. What is it that you observed about the platform? Did it help you? Anything that you felt that this can be improved? Feel free.
Okay, so I'll be very, I mean, only have good things to say, but I'll be extremely honest. The reason why this worked for me and the reason why I came back here the second time was because I realized that when you are studying, at least the kind of person I am, when I'm studying something, I want to feel like I'm being challenged almost immediately. I've learned something. I do not want to wait until I've learned, say, 20 different things and then I'm getting a final mock test. So for example, most of, like, if you're going with a textbook or if you're going with, say, a curriculum that offers you a textbook that tells you, okay, solve these 20 problems from word problems, that's not something that might be something that might help you if you have that you have ability, obviously. But for me, what helped me was the fact that I was somebody who was very, I mean, I don't know how to say it, but I would say micromanaging things, but I want to know that I've covered all my bases. And because of that, it becomes essential for, like, a person like me to have, to feel like if you've learned a concept, you're tested almost immediately on that concept. You test me on little things, and then as a whole, I can have a better understanding of how it is that I can evaluate my ability in that topic. I need to know where it is that I'm starting in distance, speed, and time, to know where it is that I'm going to end up in distance, speed, and time, to know where it is that I'm going to end up in word problems, and then ultimately know where it is that I'm going to end up in quant. Like, that was what this platform offered to me. The fact that you're simulating the test environment, not just with every subsection, not just with every not just with every topic within that subsection, but with every subtopic. And you're doing it for different, you're not doing it only for, say, learning activities or the process skills, where you have those files that actually give you GMAT type questions. And that's something a lot of other institutes also offer. You're doing it with concepts. So you boost my confidence in a way that makes me feel like I've got this. Like, I know what time it is that I'm taking. I know where it is that I know that I have the assurance that where it is that I'm going to start is not necessarily where it is I'm going to finish. And if it's useful and helpful for revision, because again, you allow me to bookmark questions, which is first time, again, I wasn't aware of all of that. I knew bookmarking was there, didn't use it because I came from a very old school approach. So I was actually screenshotting every single question. Yeah, my desktop had a lot of junk because of that. This time I bookmark. And it's helpful for revision as well, because all I have to do the next time around, provided it's cemented properly, is say either look at my bookmark questions, or sometimes if I just wanted to see a topic in 15 minutes, give the diagnostic quiz again, see where it is that you stand. So all of those things helped me.
That's very interesting that you went through the diagnostic quiz again. Sometimes I have to convince students, no, it's okay if you've done it earlier, do it again. That's where your learning will come from. So I'm happy to see somebody state this on record, because I sometimes do have to convince students, like, it's okay that you did it 2 months ago, do it now, see where you stand now. So it's a very important thing. So
very humbling.
Another thing that you pointed out here is very interesting, that one thing that worked for you in the course are the micro level assessments. It's not just that you have all these assessments which come in at a later point of time. Even for a concept, you're trying to figure out, okay, we have taught you a concept, but have you really understood the concept? We want to understand that. So there is an assessment built in to capture that as well. So that seems to have helped you.
I think it's also just the fact that, again, this is because I keep on saying that I'm young, but I'm still I just came out of school. So I have a very schoolgirlish mentality when it comes to, how do I say this? When it comes to affirmation. I like being affirmed. I like being told that, okay, you've done it. You get this was just basically the equivalent of a gold star for every little thing. I wouldn't say it's a participation trophy because I've earned it, but I don't want you to tell me at the very end. I'm a little impatient, so I didn't want to wait till the end. I'm not sure whether my test, which I can get to, but whether my cementing quizzes will give me that 90 percentile. But when I'm doing distance, speed, and time, I want you to tell me towards the end, okay, you're the best at distance, speed, and time. And so I get that towards the end. It was extremely humbling when in the beginning, my diagnostic quizzes, I'd get like a 28%, and then towards the end, it would come to, say, from 84% to 100%.
Yes.
I got an email from Rajat where he'd tell you that you're in the top. So I treasured those emails. I have them all bookmarked.
Oh,
And I'd
nice. That's
read
very
it.
nice.
So that helped a lot. The fact that you were just affirming at every stage that, you're doing something right. And I think that helps.
Great. So good insights about the course for everybody listening. Even for us, it tells me that there these elements work, and it also tells me what more we can add to make the student experience more enriching. So tell me about the student forum. Did you utilize the forum? Was it useful for you, or it was not something that you looked at?
I used it immensely. Second time more than the first. The first time I was just someone who was coursing through life trying to figure out finish portion as much as I could. Second time I used it substantially. I used it to the point where I was told that you have a limit for like these questions and maybe you can start asking after the 15th. And I was like, okay. One thing
You were testing the limits of our system then.
yeah. The reason why the student forum is so helpful is because there's a lot of things that the e-GMAT does, right? Obviously, firstly you have concepts that are explained to you. So you have solutions for the quizzes, and then you have for like practice files of certain quizzes or questions that are important. You actually have video solutions that people are explaining to you. You have a problem, you can maybe email the strategy expert. But what if you still not understand what it is that they've explained as a question? That's when I'd go to the forum. I'd go to the forum and I'd firstly feel less alone when I'd see students asking the same question as me. I was like, I'm not the only one. And what actually helped me with the student forum is the fact that, again, this is something that I've been told, when you're comparing online versus offline education, or what it is that you should do, what is it that you should go for when you're basically trying to figure out where it is that you will study for an exam, a competitive exam. One argument that I hear a lot is the fact that, you go offline, you're meeting people, you're sitting in a classroom, you're discussing ideas, you're discussing questions. I think
you have a channel to ask questions.
Yeah. But for me, I think we often fail to acknowledge the fact that not everybody is comfortable asking those questions in person. There's also this chance, and I've been through that firsthand. So I know that, when you're studying with people who are older than you, maybe more experienced than you, and in general seem smarter than you, you might hesitate to ask certain questions. And if you're in that environment, you might not remember all the questions you want to ask. Also, if it's always you're in that position where someone's stronger. I mean, I wouldn't say they're stronger than you, but they're able to assert themselves better than you. And so within that time that is allotted for questions, you'll often have certain people dominating that discussion, certain people having discussions. When you come to, say, a student forum, even though you're not interacting with these people, you get access to, say, questions that were asked by people over a period of time. So I'm not just getting access to these questions or doubts that my peers or people writing this exam with me currently have asked, but also people who wrote this 5 years back, 10 years back, some people who I read success stories on. I'm just like, isne ye bhi question pucha tha. So that's there. Secondly, you're extremely prompt in your responses. And thirdly, this is the most important factor. Sometimes you will see somebody on that forum who solved the question differently. And this is where e-GMAT comes in. And it's just very nice to see how sometimes you have your strategy experts lauding that person, telling them that, okay, this is an extremely effective way to solve it, efficient way to solve it. And now it's up to you to figure out whether that works for you. So for a lot of word problem questions, and I think 1 or 2 algebra questions, I'd actually screenshot those parts of the forum and have a little folder where I'd write Vishal answer. So something like
that's very
that.
nice.
You're learning from different people, just learning from the strategy expert who's extremely prompt in responding to your questions. You're learning from different people. You also learn how to research. You learn how to put in that work because there are a lot of questions. Scroll through all of them. Even if you think I want to ask this one particular question and I'm the only unique entity that has had this question in my mind, chances are you're not that unique. Somebody's had it before. Go through that.
Oh,
and
yes.
in the process, you will also find people asking questions that you might not have thought of, and you're like, okay, this could have been a doubt for me. So that helped.
Perfect. I think I'm very happy that the student forum has been helpful to you, and this is something that we see across. It's not just that you can get your doubt cleared; it's also the fact that so many students before you have had very interesting questions. Some are eye-opening questions even for us, and like, okay, this is an angle that I had not considered. And so the subject matter experts, when we look at it, we have intense debates about this stuff. So when somebody comes up with a new approach and is actually right, we do a peer review. I mean, the subject matter experts who are behind the forum, we do a peer review and said, okay, does this make sense? Does it test well against any variation of this kind of question? So we do all that behind the scenes. So it's good to see that you're observing the output side of things. When we say, yes, this is a scalable method, this is perfect, go right ahead with it. So it's great, fantastic. So now let's talk about your first GMAT attempt, the one that happened in February 2022. So to give the context, you were consistently improving through your mocks. I could see your mock score. You started with a 520, but towards the end, you're hitting that 710. But the actual exam did not go as well as we had planned. So I think you got a 660, Q44, V38. Yeah. So take me through that attempt, what happened, etc., etc.
I think what I want to maybe start off with is something that Rida mentioned. The 710 that I got was not a sustainable score. She mentioned it in bold. I was
yes.
I wasn't heartbroken. I wasn't heartbroken at all because I knew it was the truth. But I was terrified because I knew what that meant for me. I knew I was in a position where I was not going to be able to reschedule my exam. And again, this is something I didn't taste. I wanted to, the first attempt, I had spoken to my family about this. And at that point of time, again, was in that part of my journey where I was going to listen to whatever it is you told me. So I was at this point in time where, at this point in time, my university, which had been online for 2 years, was going to reopen offline. And because it was going to reopen offline, I needed to ideally, I had this plan in mind. I was going to get done with the GMAT, and then I was going to, I was told that, exam pressure would increase, all of that would happen. So I wanted to give the GMAT before I had finished my, before my offline journey for school resumed. Now, the second thing that happened was the fact that if you recall what I said about when it is that I initially planned to give the GMAT, it was July. Yeah. And from July to February, I had already bought a lot of time for myself. I'm not sure if I would consider it buying a lot of time for myself because I needed that time. But to an outsider who's not privy to my GMAT journey and who's not privy to the mistakes that I was making, it was just, you're buying time for this exam because maybe you're scared of it, or you won't know until you do it. So all of that basically, it basically boiled down to booking this GMAT date. First mistake, you do not book and I did repeat it again the second time, but do not ever book a GMAT date and then think to yourself, I'm going to prepare for it. Don't do it without asking a strategy consultant. Talk to them, communicate. There was very little communication. I was doing a really, really bad thing, which was not continuing the same thread that I was basically writing on. I was starting a new mail, talking to a different strategy expert. So probably increased your workload. I'm sorry for that. But yeah, so there was very little communication. Communication was erratic. That was the first mistake. Second thing that I wouldn't call a lot of mistakes. Second thing that I went wrong in was the fact that there was no cementing. Finished number properties. And then I went to word problems because I did cement 2 tests. And even though I cemented it back then in my defense, I don't think we had that module. We didn't have the error log module.
Error log module. That came a little later. You're right.
Later. So I was clueless about how to cement, even though it was there. I didn't have as many insights on what it is that I was cementing. So the first test that I saw, I got a 70%, I think 7 out of 10 in one of the medium questions. And I thought to myself, okay, made 3 mistakes. Let's give the next test. So, why you made those mistakes, how it is that you had to cement, I didn't know it. And I think that's a very, very crucial point in your prep journey. If you do not know how to cement, you you don't know where it is that you're going wrong, and you're going to be perpetually afraid of making mistakes. And when that happens, you're not going to learn from them, and you're just going to keep on making more mistakes, and you're going to try to, I think some of us run away from our mistakes more than the other. I was one of those people. So you're going to try to run away from that. And how will you run away from it? You'll go to a different section. You'll tell yourself that, forget sections. I changed, forget topics. I changed Pura sections. I was like, I'm not doing quant, let me go to quant. And come back to quant. So that jumping is essentially you running away from your mistakes. And once you can't run anymore, you're going to tell yourself, forget it, I'm not doing this. Let me directly go and jump into giving mocks. And when you give a mock, it's going to sometimes boost your confidence again, because there are only 31 questions. There are only 36 questions. You don't have control over what topics are being tested. There is a chance you won't get questions from all topics.
Yeah, so there's an important point here that I think I should say. So we don't look at just one mock as one mock is just one data point. We would never, say with confidence, unless you can replicate that across at least 2 mocks, we would never say, yes, you're there. We'd say that's probably where Rida gave that feeling. Okay, this is one result. This result is good, but you may not be there yet. So that's one thing. So carry on. I just wanted to make sure that this aspect is known. One mock is just one data point. Yeah.
I think I got a 630 or a 6. Yeah, I got a 630 on.
You got a. I think you got a 660 in that.
No,
in the first mock. Okay, got it.
I got a 630 my first mock, and I celebrated because from a 520 to a 630, you need to understand that the elation was there. And this was when I'd not done a lot of those things. So then after I got and when I got a 630, I was 2 days before I'd started advanced topics. Till the end, I didn't touch algebra geometry until that 1 week. So now here's the thing, I'm doing multiple things and they're all scaring me because I'm not following through on one thing in particular. Again, this has a lot to do with timing as well, because I know that, you assume that you're a college student, you assume that the student is, compared to people who are working full time, you assume that this is a student who's studying during the pandemic. So she's staying, my parents were of the opinion, you're staying at home all day. You don't have to travel. What is it that you're actually doing? You have time. But in reality, so now that my college is actually offline, now that my GMAT's over, I've been told that your work pressure will suddenly increase. Maybe don't plan something for when school starts. And I'm thinking to myself, wait a second, that was my reality 2 years, 2 years and a year ago as well. What changed? So again, do not undermine the amount of work you'd have in an online scenario, and be wise about when it is that you're planning to not just write your GMAT, but when it is that you're planning to commit to the GMAT. That is more important, because when you commit to it at a time, if you have the option of committing to it at a time where you know that your other commitments are ones that will not require more time of you, that will not require more effort, that will not drain you of that energy, that's when you'll be able to perform better. So is figuring, I was not smart about when it is that I was planning to actually truly commit to it. I couldn't balance it side by side. I probably would have been able to had I stuck to something. Second thing is speak to your strategy consultant regularly. Communicate with them, because you have this, I don't think a lot of places you can access, say, such a wonderful resource, such a steadfast source of comfort. I've sent you a lot of panic-induced mails that have had nothing to do with my preparation, more to do with my mental state of mind, and you've told me to calm down. So become more, and it's daunting to communicate with a complete stranger on the internet and tell them that this is where I'm going wrong. You want to tell them this is where I'm going right. So don't try to impress your strategy consultant. They can see right through you.
Oh, we have all the data. We are looking at data.
So you don't have to be like, okay, this is what I'm doing. Don't hide anything. The sooner you tell them that I need help, the more easy. The more they can facilitate, that improvement plan, that process, it'll help you more. And please don't book the GMAT before you know that you're there, before someone told you that you can get there. Mocks are helpful, but mocks aren't everything, and they're not a very accurate predictor of success, or unless you've given it at a stage where you've received a consistent score. If you're, say, seeing improvement, that's a different thing. But you get 710 and you think, okay, this is now you're going to replicate it, like you said.
Yes, absolutely. So we also we do not advise students to take mocks while they're still in that hardcore preparation phase. It's only once you're really ready, then we start taking mocks, and there we want to see consistency. With one mock, we will never assume anything. Okay, you're able to show a consistent show in 2-3 mocks. Yes. Then it gives us a certain sense of confidence that the student is ready. That's when we give our okay to, yes, go. It's our blessings. No, go and take the GMAT. Just don't screw up on the exam.
That's there. I mean, I wish I'd gone through that route. So main advice is don't book the GMAT before you're ready, because this is not like a very, again, because I come from India, very Indian mindset is, the fact that you have an exam that you can give any time from you is something that a lot of people can't digest. They're like, how is it? It's not on one particular day. So if this is a blessing for you, treat it as such. Don't try to, replicate that. Also, I think to me, what mattered towards the end, like in the first attempt, I didn't go, I don't know if it was because I didn't see it properly. I didn't go through the process skills module that was there for the basics, properly going through that. And again, the second time around, I got to see that anybody who sees that cementing error log video, they're going to understand what each process skill means. That is important. When you understand what each process skill means, even when you're looking at video solutions, when you're looking at where it is that they're explaining that you went wrong, you're actually going to be able to enjoy that. Otherwise, I was just somebody who would go and put it at 1.5, 2 with the speed, because I didn't understand it. I was just like, give me the solution and move on. So that's important. And what else?
That's a lot of good advice. I hope a lot of folks are listening to this, because we do still see some students make the same mistakes. So I hope people learn a lot from this. So that first attempt did not go well, but that's when you reached out to us again. And I think this time I came into the picture. I remember seeing a really lengthy mail. My first thought was, who is this Akanksha? What is this mail? It's so long. But as I went through it, I went through your stats. We realized that verbal, you started at a V31, but you had already consistently shown us V38 to V40, somewhere in the V38, 39, 40 range. So for me, verbal was not a concern. I knew you would get there. You just probably needed to make sure you revise things. The ability was already there. Quant was a place that, okay, Q44 is not going to get you anywhere. You need to increase it at least a little bit. So we put you on a quant plan, like start studying quant properly. And then, of course, a lot of to and fro mails were there. It was a pleasure, though your mails were really long. They were insightful, because when I went through those mails, they're like, okay, I understand your concerns. I understand where you're coming from. So it also enabled us to, give you better advice. So thank you for that. That's there. So walk us through your second attempt while you were preparing. How did you prepare? I know you started with quant majorly, but what all did you do? You told me about how the error log, going through the error log, strategic review, those process skills that really helped you. That's a very important point. Did what you learn in NP translate into other subsections also? Did you see those kinds of effects happening?
Yes, I did. So first thing again is this time I was smart about my time commitment. I reached out to you I think when I had one paper of my second year then. So I reached out to you on the 26th, I think.
Yeah, 26th, 27th April. Yeah, somewhere around 27th.
And my break started from the 28th. So I knew I could commit properly from the 29th. This is a golden period for me. I had nothing else. I had like internships, other projects going on. Wanted to become a screenwriter for a brief period of time. So you had a passion project over there. But in all honesty, I was someone who had time on my side. And because of that, I knew that this time I was going to be able to follow to the best of my ability, whatever it is that you asked me to do blindly. So quant number properties, section 1 was something that didn't take a lot of time initially, like stage 1. And I was extremely happy about it. But then I knew that the battle had not been won. I was clear about it this time. I was like, cementing is where you're actually going to see what it is that you've learned. So what helped me initially was watching that cementing error log video that was at the end of number properties. I have a notebook where I'd actually written down what each process still means. And once you made that Excel sheet, I mean, I use the same template for everything. I actually have replicated that folder for my college education as well now.
Oh, that's wonderful to hear.
Yeah, it's something I'm using that for everything. So anything that I learn, certification course, now I'm using that because it's a lot of us don't know. I don't think we have a problem with learning how to study. It doesn't take much for you to commit to something, work hard. I think anybody who's wanting to give the GMAT and actually dedicating this amount of, say, money, time, all of these resources is willing to work hard. What we lack knowledge in is, say, how does you revise? And that is what changes how, like, that's what brings you your score. It isn't how well you've studied or how hard you've worked, it's how well you've revised, because that affects retention. So now, because of that, I was able to understand where it is that I could potentially go wrong and what that meant. So once we started with the error log, I think my first number properties, I mean, just understanding the error log made all the difference to me, because the first medium test that I gave, I got 100%. And the reason I got 100% was because I was solving these questions with the error log in my mind. I was like, okay, this is where I might go wrong. This is where I might
Those
go wrong.
process steps were entrenched in your brain. For example, you're not going to forget a particular consideration that consider all cases. You're not going to forget that because it's stuck in your brain that you cannot do that.
You can't, exactly. And you're just like, you're looking at a question that seems complicated. It won't stay complicated for long, because what is it I have to do? Do I have to simplify over here? Do I have to translate it over here? Or if a question seems deceptively easy, you're just going to ask yourself, wait, did I consider all cases? Did I look at the constraints?
Yes.
So and one good thing about all of the video solutions that you see in e-GMAT is the fact that you have different colors for that. You highlight it. So you'd see those colors popping in your head, and you knew that you had to solve it in this way. Another thing that helped me was this time, and I didn't do this last time, looking at my takt time. So because of that, because solving a question, these are questions that you can solve. Just like, these are questions that are designed for any average person to solve if you're given like an unlimited amount of time. What you need to know is how to solve them within that constraint, that time constraint. So my goal wasn't just accuracy, it was also efficiency. Was I able to solve the question in the time that I was required to solve it? Was I able to move on when I didn't know how to solve a certain question? That is what really helps you when you're in that state, because again, this is a computer adaptive test, so the difficulty is going to increase. And you don't need to know how it is. You don't need to know more than the questions. You need to know your own mind. You need to know how you react to those situations. Knowing that takt time and really reading it, putting it in that Excel sheet, just putting what the threshold time was, putting what my time was.
What your time is, yeah.
Yeah, it's very repetitive, very cumbersome, very annoying. But that is what helps you in the end, because it tells you a lot about who you are. It tells you, like, for instance, I realized that I was what I would call, say, someone who stick to a question like chewing gum. So you don't do that. I don't understand a question. There were questions where I had 6 minutes where I spent it. And even if I was able to recover that time somewhere else, what was the chance that I would be able to do it in the exam? Like, I wouldn't be able to do it. I would just miss out on a question. And even if I didn't, I was worried that, for me, it was a computer adaptive test, and I didn't even know what computer adaptive meant. I was just like, okay, we might hold this again. They might give me a question that's towards, say, like, it's like a lower difficulty level because I've spent so much time on this. So the error log is basically your Bible for any computer adaptive test.
So 2 things that really work for you in the second attempt, in your preparation for the second attempt, if I summarize: number 1, you really understood what the error log is for. You started observing those things. And because you had that viewpoint of, okay, these are the possible ways I can screw up, you were proactively avoiding those screw ups. That helped you. You also had the idea of takt time in your brain. So it helps you not obsess over a question. You know that typically Akanksha takes so and so amount of time for NP questions, NP hard level questions, or NP questions in general. So you know not to obsess over a question. You see that you're exceeding that time. Even on a test scenario, you were able to, okay, let's not obsess over this question, let's move on. So I understand that helped you in the exam, that you were not stuck, fixated on any question.
I won't say I wasn't stuck. I was stuck on one question.
One question.
1 or 2 questions, and I ought to say my lower quant score to that. But in my, because I don't know where it is that I went wrong in quant.
That happens. So,
But this is the end. Go ahead.
yeah. So, as I was telling you earlier, if you had put in a little more time on quant, that would have been a Q49. You would have got a 780 or something like that. But it's okay. Yeah.
After a point of time, I knew where it is that I was. Again, a lot of that would have been sorted had I not booked my GMAT date before preparing. But you grow and you learn. So
yes,
maybe
absolutely. It's excellent. So, tell me one more thing. In the last week before the exam, what was going on in your brain? What is it that you were focusing on? What did you do? What did you stay away from? Any insights into your last week before the exam? Like even those last 3-4 days.
My last week was, I wouldn't say it was actually like, if I could compare it to my last week before this thing, the first attempt, my last week was extremely turbulent. I was someone who was giving mock tests. I was giving it from MBA.com. I was giving it from e-GMAT. I was giving it everywhere. And I remember there was a lot of crying. I was extremely disheartened sometimes. I was extremely elated. Mood swings over mood swings. And it was bad because it was extremely challenging. I spoke to you, and then I didn't speak to you. I spoke to Rida, and I was advised to reschedule it. This time around, I knew that okay, my preparation for quant is incomplete. But I was very clear that I can't reschedule it. So please, if you're going to tell me to reschedule it, don't, because it hurts my heart. But I'm going to do my best with what I have. The last week I spent doing algebra, and I spent a lot of time revising my error logs for number properties and stage 1 for word problems. Now, the second thing that I also did was I wouldn't recommend this approach. I didn't over obsess over verbal, because I was of the opinion that if I started from scratch now, I was going to trip myself with questions that were there. Even simple questions, I'd find it difficult. I had this time my approach, again, this is where I talk about coming into my own. I was clear about the fact that I had to do my own thing. So I told my parents that I asked them, they were supportive. So I told them that let me give mock tests when I'm ready. So I knew I had to give mock tests. And of course, if you have an exam that's booked for the 1st of July, you should ideally maybe look at 20th or 24th. So they're not wrong for asking me to do that. But initially, obviously, there was a little pushback. There was maybe try giving it on the 15th. Why wait till June? Maybe give it in the month of May itself. So I was clear about the fact that I was not going to be ready. And towards the end, I think I did demonstrate to them that I was working hard. Maybe you couldn't understand what it is that I'm doing. Maybe you're just looking at me color code Excel sheets the entire day and wondering why is my daughter not writing anything in a notebook. But you're seeing that I'm there sitting on my table and doing what I have to do. So 25th was the day I gave my first mock, and this is the only Sigma-X mock I gave this time. And I got a 750 on that. Was supposed to give it on the 24th, but my father told me that, give it when you're ready. And there was something else that was happening within my household. We were preparing for, say, a celebration, a puja. So everybody was focused on that. And because the focus was not on me and not on my GMAT like last time, and it was the only thing that I was doing, I was in an extremely zen state of mind. I was thinking about what it is that I'm going to do the next day, who it is I'm going to meet. So I gave the exam, I got a 750, and my first thought was like one of relief. I was elated. I was relieved because I knew I could enjoy the puja that was there the next day with my could eat what I wanted, sing for as long as I wanted. I got a break on the 26th because I had that thing. I met my best friend, didn't study a bit. I spent most of 27th also in wherever I was, and 2 days I did have a loss. It wasn't like a loss, but I didn't do much. 28th is when I came home, revised algebra again, and focused on quant. 29th is also again when I focused on quant, started with geometry, and focused. By this time, I knew that I didn't have it in me to start with, even though I didn't give up hope that, I was going to get to cementing algebra. I knew realistically that maybe that's not going to happen. So what I focused on doing was I created an error log for stage 1 of algebra as well. I was looking at error log. I looked at all my error logs, and 30 30th was when I told my family that see till 11:30 I'm going to be doing geometry or maths or probability, just look through advanced topics. And after 11:30 is when my mother was the one who insisted that you close these books, you do them later if you have to do it, focus on verbal. So I spent that day looking at verbal. And what I do think that is what I would attribute to a good score the next day, because I think it's very important towards the end to not like, realistically that what you do in the last 2 days or the last 1 day is not going to determine your GMAT score, not in the slightest. Like, in not
Absolutely. We say the same thing. This is something we also insist on, right? That last week is not where you're going to sit and slog and cram and do well in the exam. It doesn't work that way.
It can only go downhill if you do the wrong thing. You never go uphill. So because of that, I think towards your approach towards the end, this is what I wish I could have told my former self, is do things that make you feel like you know everything about this exam, or you know everything about yourself. So because of that, that's what I attribute to not doing well before that. That's what I attribute to feeling confident, sitting through an exam where maybe I didn't know geometry that well, having that innate confidence in me that, even if I don't know these questions, I know the pattern, because that's another I think that's very useful. That's a benefit of the error log. It helps you understand patterns. You don't need to understand concepts. You don't need to understand the exact solutions. Ideally, you should. But if you can't, you understand patterns. You're able to make good guesstimates. And at that point in time, your objective is to get through that exam. Don't leave any questions, and do to the best of your ability. Get through a hard question, go to the next one. So all of this helped me this time.
It's very useful insights, because you're basically describing a situation where, it's not the ideal situation. You would ideally want to have more time, but the test is booked. How do you optimize? And one of the important points here is focus on, you cannot learn too much in that last week. That should not be your focus. You've already learned a lot of stuff. In your case, for example, we had already figured out that your verbal is at that B38, 39, 40, if not anything higher. Probably you could do, on a good day, you'll do even better than that. So verbal, you still had to go through it and revise it to make sure you stay sharp in that. But it's not about going through the entire course again and, doing every single cementing, because you cannot do all that in the last week. Those are things that you should do before. On the last week, focus on being truly ready for the test, being in the right frame of mind. Your point about the first attempt, that last week being a phase of turbulence, versus the second attempt you were in a glacial, calm, zen-like mode, it makes a lot of difference. A lot of students don't realize the importance of not doing too much and risking fatigue, risking mental stress in that last week. So very glad that you brought out these points. So excellent. So one thing that I'm sure, a lot of students listening into this conversation would probably like to know, what's next for you? What is Akanksha going to do next?
Akanksha is still figuring out what she's going to do next. So for so long, the GMAT had been my goal, and I still have a year of undergrad left. I do want to apply to a good management institute. I'm looking at universities both in India and abroad. I'm trying to figure out where my areas of interest lie. So I'm trying to do internships in, say, different departments, say a company looking at HR, looking at marketing, doing a basic finance course, because again, one thing that I noticed, when you come from a background like liberal arts, for all that it teaches you about sociology, for all that it teaches you about humanities, which is important. I tell people, do not downplay that. I know a lot of people, again, who are my age, who want to get into management someday and are certain about it after that 12th, will feel inclined to go for a BCom, to go for a BBA. I get their understanding, their logic. But I think if you have the resources to apply for a master's and you know that this is something you can do later, maybe go for an undergrad that is going to focus or center around your area of interest. What you want essentially is to optimize the time that you have to prepare, because no matter what you're doing, you still need the same amount of time to prepare for an entrance exam.
Absolutely.
And no matter what you're doing, you will still need a good GPA. So find something that interests you, even if it is not something that is, say, the conventional route. Take something. So arts was something I was interested in. It was something that a lot of people questioned me about because I did commerce in the 10th, 11th, 12th, and I did science in the 8th, 9th, 10th. And my family also asked me, why is it that you're doing arts now when you want to go into management? I would recommend that you do something that is unconventional, not for the sake of it. Do something that makes sense to you, that's going to be there and support your journey of transformation, especially between the ages of 18 to 21, as opposed to, something that feels predetermined, because I never felt stifled over here because I was doing something that was in my area of interest. And I was also figuring out why academia would not be right for me, why screenwriting or something in the creatives would not be right for me. So those are ambitions that, people my age usually have. You want the glamour, you want the glitz, you think you can transform the world. Go into something, if you can, that tells you what that actually entails and why you might not want to do it. So changed my perspective. But again, downside of this is that you don't have a lot of courses on finance. I'm doing a basic course on finance right now. I want to learn a programming language, so that's what I'm doing. And that's about it.
Oh, I'm sure, people in your shoes, there are other people who are exactly in the same situation. Like, okay, I'm a fresher, I'm currently doing my undergrad. What should I do? Should I go for an MBA? Why go for an MBA? Does it make sense to write the GMAT right now, even before I have, WorkX? So a lot of these points, I think you've discussed, and it is useful for a lot of people listening to this. I always like to end the interview with this one question: your advice to fellow GMAT aspirants, as somebody who has been through this journey, for it's over a year, right? So in total, of course, there's lots of breaks in between. So for somebody who's gone through this grind and got that score that you wanted to achieve, your advice to fellow GMAT aspirants.
I think I'll divide into two parts. First is what I'd advise people to do on the day of the exam. And like where it is that you choose to give your exam is also extremely important. I know that GMAT offers GMAT online. I gave my first exam through GMAT online. I would, the second time I gave the GMAT, the test center. Yep. If given an option, I would advise you to go to a test center and give it, because it gives you the environment and it gives you that assurance that you have assistance, actual physical assistance in case things go wrong. And I'm saying this because my GMAT experience, the first time around I was given GMAT online, was not the greatest, because everything that could go wrong, would go wrong, should go wrong, did go wrong for me. Like I had my network stopped cooperating. So an exam that should have taken me 3 hours took me more than 4.5 hours, because I was setting things up, and it was disastrous because I was giving my integrated reasoning section and my screen just disappeared in a bit because my internet wasn't cooperating with me that day. Mm-hmm. Also, when you're doing it at home, I think you're not in that, like, it's a big day for you. You will still have anxiety, you will still have panic. To change an environment actually helps drill the fact that you're giving this exam for real in you a lot sooner, because you're seeing other people around you, and beyond a point in time, you're not allowed to revise, you're not allowed to do anything. And so you're more confident about what your situation is, as opposed to giving it at home. That was what it was for me. I was just sitting in the same bedroom, and and the off chance that your exam doesn't go that well, it's like you don't have to ever visit the center again. You will have to stay in the same room. So that was extremely difficult for me. Like after the aftermath, the disastrous aftermath of my first exam, I was looking at my room all differently, and I told my mother I need to renovate it. I want a fresh. So what is the test center part?
The room did not feel the same ever since.
I felt heartbroken. I was like, this is tainted. And in fact, most of my GMAT prep this time when I was studying, I studied at my dining table. I was studying in the living room. I was like, I need a change of scenery. But having said that, when it comes to preparing for GMAT or preparing for any exam, and I think this is like a takeaway that I will have to constantly reaffirm to myself, is that I think you don't have to be good at everything. It's not important to be good at everything. What is important is that you don't downplay what you are good at, because that gives you confidence. For me, I wouldn't say I felt inferior in a way, but I always felt like what I was good at was not good enough to be considered good. Don't be cocky about it, obviously. Like initially, you don't have to, like it, being good at something doesn't translate to doing well in it. So, for example, if I'm writing poems, I'm still getting a what V31. So you don't have to be the greatest at English to be good at purple. You have to allow yourself that space to sort of engage with whatever it is that you're studying, that material that you're actually looking at, and try to derive whatever it is that you can. But at the same time, things that you might not be as like, I think it's very relative what you're good at, what you're bad at. So I don't think that I'm bad at quant. I think you can become better at it. You consider, you put that label upon you only if you're comparing yourself to someone. So this time what helped me was, again, affirming to myself, or it comes from within. Once you're putting in hard work, once you're consistent about it, once you're making that error log that shows that you're consistent about something, that reflects the fact that you've put in the work, you'll get something out of it. And so you're more confident in asserting that this is who I am, this is what I'm good at. And it's not just the exam, it's not just the people around you, even to yourself, you're telling them that, take it or leave it. So I was proud of the fact that I was good at English, and I was proud of the fact that I was trying to become better at quant. And I think towards the end, that is something that I was able to achieve. And yeah, that's about it.
So very well said. I'm sure, for people listening to this, you've given a certain amount of inspiration that, hey, it's not about, being weak or being strong. You put in the work, you will see the results, right? And you put in the work, and you got the results. So thanks a lot, Akanksha, for you taking your time. I'm taking time out to, speak with me, speak with us. We at e-GMAT are extremely proud of your achievement. Uh, 740 is a great score. I really wish you all the success. Do stay in touch. We'd love to see where you eventually, once you make those decisions, where you eventually enter. That's something that we always love to stay in touch with our students. So make sure you do that. We'll do the same. So with that, let's conclude this particular interview. Thanks a lot.